A lot of our lakes up here, you know, they're shallower, they've got some vegetation in them. You got to cover a lot of flats. They may have a little bit of color in the water. My number 2 lure, first thing in the spring, and again, these are baits that as soon as the water opens up, and I can start fishing out there, as soon as we get water that you can launch a boat in, even sometimes when the lake is still half frozen, I can go out there and I'll catch bass with hard baits like this. So, you know, a lot of guys think you got to fish a grub or a jig or something like that, but most days, the best lure for me in these real cold spring scenarios are hard baits like this lipless crankbait. Now this is a straight king red-eye shad. Tremendous, tremendous early season lure. What I love about this is, you know, it's a typical lipless crankbait. It's got a lot of BBs in it, so it makes a lot of noise. But the real unique thing about these baits is the flat sides that they have. They have a real tight vibration to them. And there's something about cold water and crankbaits that have a real tight wobble that bass just can't stand. So, you know, with this, you can just cast it out there and start with a steady retrieve and just, just try to reel it along. And a lot of times you can catch some fish by doing that. But what I found with this bait is it's the way that it falls that makes it really effective. So most people just fish them like this. They just kind of reel them in with a straight retrieve. If you can fish it around some grass or some vegetation, you hit some grass, you can kind of rip it free. A lot of times that'll trigger a strike. What I do with this is I have a whole system that I use with these crankbaits. And first off, you notice I've got it rigged on a pretty big rod. This is one of my own Tour Series crankbait rods that's a composite between glass and graphite. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. I get the sensitivity of graphite so I can feel if I've got any weeds or slime on the hooks. Even the slightest little bit with that graphite, it tells you everything that bait's doing, even on a really long cast. And what the glass does is it gives me a nice soft action, and it makes the action of the rod a lot slower. And what I mean by that is if I hit a stump or a rock with this bait, the rod unloads a lot slower than a graphite rod. A graphite rod, when you bend it and let the snap out of it, it immediately jumps back into that original space. And that doesn't allow that bait to really deflect off the cover as well. So that's why I like glass for crankbaits, is the way that slow action allows that bait to deflect if I'm fishing it around rocks or stumps or grass, things like that. The other thing by having a real long rod like this is it really gives me depth control. And what I want depth control for was this bait right here, it sinks, you know, so I want to get it down to where it's going to be down there near the bottom. And if I'm fishing a shallower flat, say it's 2, 3, 4 foot deep, I can cast the bait out there and fish it with my rod tip up. And you know, with a 7+ foot rod like this, that keeps the bait a lot higher in the water column. If I want it to run deeper, say I'm fishing a deeper flat or the weeds are a little bit deeper, I can put my rod tip down and it allows that bait to run a lot deeper with the exact same size of line. Then, if I've got a couple of these different outfits rigged, one with, say, 10-pound test fluorocarbon, and I always use fluorocarbon for crankbaits, okay? Fluorocarbon is, to me, is a must for your crankbaits and your jerkbaits. What fluorocarbon does is first off, it sinks, so it allows your crankbaits to run a little bit deeper. It's real low in stretch, so that it gives you tremendous sensitivity and a really good hook set, even with a soft rod like this. And the other thing is it's really, really abrasion resistant. So the durability aspect of it is really good. So for crankbaits, always fluorocarbon. If I can't get the bait to hit the bottom, the thing about a red-eye shad is the way that it falls is it stays perfectly balanced. Unlike other lipless baits that want to flip over on their side, this one will stay perfectly balanced and it kind of wiggles as it goes to the bottom. But when I drop this in the water just with a slack line, watch how it just shimmies to the bottom. But when it falls like that, can you see the way it swims to the bottom? Well, if you rip it off of a piece of cover like that and drop it like that, a lot of times you're going to trigger a bass into striking. So what I'll do is I'll make a nice long cast, start my retrieve, and I'll just kind of sweep the rod to the side. And as soon as it falls like that, a lot of times that's when the bass are gonna bite it. So with a lipless crankbait like this, instead of just making a cast where you're just burning it back to the boat and you're not stopping it or anything at all, every time I let that bait fall, I've got a potential of triggering a bass to strike. So I'm gonna pull it to the side, let it fall. Pull it, let it fall. Kind of yo-yo it along. And that's when they're going to bite it, is when it falls like that. It's got that wounded swimming action down the bottom. I didn't even see what happened there, but it looked good. And with that bait right there, every time you can come in contact with something and you rip it up like that and it flutters down, you got a great chance of catching one's attention like that, and they just can't help but bite it. They don't think about it. It's not that they're actively feeding or chasing anything, but they react to that bait. It's that tight action, it's the sound of those BBs, it's the vibration that these baits give off. And then you match that with a natural color, something that they're used to feeding on, and they can't help themselves but to bite it. So, you know, a bait like this is a tremendous bait. It's one of the first things that I'm going to use a lot in the spring of the year. And colors like this are very natural for our lakes. You know, most of the bass in our lakes feed on crayfish and bluegill. So those are the color patterns that I'm really going to use early in the year like that. You got clear water like this, you want natural colors. If you've got stained water, that's where I want to use bright colors. You know, I might use a chartreuse or a red, fluorescent colors that are more visible. But in clear water like this, you want to pick something real natural. And that's the way that I really want to start out the year.